All right, so today we are going deep on home insurance.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah, you sent over a bunch of articles about this, and
A lot to unpack.
yeah, so much. So is this something you're thinking about? Like, are you about to buy a house?
It could be, or maybe something happened recently that made them think, oh, wait a minute, is my insurance going to cover this?
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe just a general curiosity. You're like, wait, does my insurance actually cover that?
Right.
So we're going to figure all that out today, and I think there are going to be some surprises along the way.
I think so, too.
Like, did you know that there's actually a specific type of home insurance that most people have?
Most popular.
Yeah, and it might surprise you what it doesn't cover.
Definitely some misconceptions out there.
Okay, so first things first, let's talk about the two main types of home insurance.
Okay, lay it on me.
All right, so you've got buildings insurance and you've got contents insurance.
The dynamic duo.
The dynamic duo, yeah. Buildings insurance, that's like the guardian of your home's structure, the walls, the roof, the
The
foundation.
skeleton, you could say.
Yeah, exactly. It's there to protect you from like fire, storms, vandalism, anything that could really like mess with the actual building itself.
And then you have contents insurance, which is everything inside your house.
Ah.
All your furniture, electronics, clothes, you name it.
Oh, okay. So like if there's a fire and my TV gets fried.
Contents insurance has got you covered.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
It's there to protect you against theft, damage, all those things that can happen to your belongings inside those four walls.
Okay, so buildings is the house itself, contents is all my stuff.
You got it.
Okay.
That makes sense.
It's important to have both.
Yeah, it sounds like it. One of the articles you sent mentioned that mortgage lenders will often require buildings insurance.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
No, I get that, they want to protect their investment, but
Right, it's their money on the line too. Yeah, but I never really thought about like how that could actually benefit the buyer.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, I mean, because lenders are so insistent on having that building's insurance in place, you can sometimes use that as leverage
Ah, I see what you're saying.
to like maybe get a better interest rate on your mortgage or something.
Smart. It's like a bargaining chip.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So even something like this that seems pretty basic can actually like work in your favor.
That's a great point. It's all about understanding the nuances.
Okay, so we've got our dynamic duo, buildings and contents. But the articles also talk about something called an HO3 form.
Ah, yes, the HO3.
It sounds kind of like mysterious, like a secret code or something.
A little bit, but it's really not that complicated.
Okay, so what is it exactly?
Well, the HO3 form, it's also called the special form policy, and it's the most common type of homeowners insurance out there.
So most people probably have this.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
It covers a wide range of risks. It's pretty comprehensive.
Okay, so like the all-inclusive package of home insurance.
You could say that, but with some important exceptions.
Oh, okay, like what?
Well, for instance, earthquakes and floods, those are usually not covered under a standard HO3.
Wait, really?
Yep, and a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah, that's scary. You just kind of assume you're covered for those things.
Right, and that's why it's so important to really understand what your policy does and doesn't cover.
Yeah, got to read that fine print, huh?
Absolutely. And if you need coverage for those specific things, you might need to get a separate policy.
So, wait a minute. Home insurance doesn't usually cover travel problems.
No, that's a whole different type of insurance.
Wow, I had no idea.
It's a common misconception.
So if my luggage gets lost or my flight's delayed, that's on me.
Pretty much, yeah. Home insurance is really designed to protect you at home.
Okay, good to know. I'm definitely going to double check my travel insurance now.
Always a good idea.
Okay, so we've talked about some of the things home insurance might not cover.
Right. Let's switch gears a bit.
Yeah, so let's talk about what it does cover. Like, what are the key areas where you can expect protection?
All right. Well, first up, we've got structural damage.
Okay, so that's like what we talked about before with buildings insurance.
Exactly. We're talking fire, storms, vandalism, even a tree falling on your house.
Oh no, not the rogue tree again.
It happens. But the important thing is this coverage isn't just about patching up a few holes. It could cover a full rebuild if necessary.
Wow, that's a lot of peace of mind.
It is. And then, of course, we have coverage for your personal belongings.
Right, all my stuff.
Exactly. So if your stuff gets damaged, destroyed, or stolen, this part of your policy kicks in.
Okay, so that would be like the furniture, the electronics, the clothes.
All of that, yep.
Mm.
And this is where having a detailed home inventory can be super helpful.
Ah, so if you need to file a claim, you can show exactly what you lost.
Precisely. It makes the whole process much smoother and helps ensure you get the right amount of compensation.
Okay, so that's a good tip, definitely worth doing. Now, what about liability protection? What is that exactly?
So this is the part of your policy that protects you if someone gets injured on your property.
Oh, okay.
Like, let's say someone slips and falls on your icy steps and breaks their arm.
Ouch.
Yeah, not a fun situation. But your liability protection could cover their medical expenses, legal fees, things like that.
Wow. So I wouldn't be personally responsible for all those costs?
Not necessarily, no. Your insurance would step in to help.
That's a huge relief. Okay, so this is all starting to make a lot more sense. It's not just about protecting your house, it's about protecting yourself financially too.
Exactly. It's about having that safety net in case something unexpected happens.
Okay, so unexpected events. What about additional living expenses? I saw that mentioned in one of the articles.
Yes. This is another important one that people often overlook.
So what is it exactly?
Imagine this. Your home is damaged, say, by a fire, and you can't leave there for a while.
Oh, that's awful. I wouldn't even know where to begin.
It's tough, for sure. But that's where this coverage comes in. It can help pay for things like temporary housing, meals, even things like pet boarding and laundry services.
Wow, so basically anything you need because you can't live in your own home.
Right. It helps minimize the disruption and financial burden during a really stressful time.
That's amazing. Okay, so we've got structural damage covered, personal belongings, liability protection, even those unexpected living expenses. It sounds like home insurance is a pretty comprehensive package.
It really is.
But one thing that caught my eye in the articles was coverage for things outside the home.
Oh, yes. That's an interesting one.
What exactly does that mean?
So we're talking about structures that are on your property but not attached to your house.
Okay, like a garage or a shed.
Exactly. Fences, driveways, things like that.
So if a storm damages my shed or a tree falls on my fence, that could be covered.
It could be, yes. But the coverage limits for these other structures are usually lower than for the main house.
Oh, okay, so I would definitely need to check my policy to see what's covered and what the limits are.
Exactly. Especially if you have any outbuildings or unique features that might need extra attention.
Got it. Okay, so before we go any further, I kind of want to circle back to buildings and contents insurance for a minute.
Sure, back to the basics.
Yeah, because we've talked a lot about what home insurance protects, but I think it would be helpful to revisit those two categories and really unpack how they work together to provide that protection.
Great idea. Sometimes it helps to go back to the foundation after you've explored all the different layers.
Exactly. So just to recap, buildings insurance is all about protecting the structure of your home.
Right, while contents insurance focuses on safeguarding your belongings within that structure.
And you can buy them together or separately.
Right, exactly. It depends on your needs and what your mortgage lender requires.
Okay, that makes sense.
Oh.
I think it would be really helpful to go through some specific scenarios just to see how these two types of insurance actually play out in real life.
Absolutely. Let's bring it to life with some examples.
Perfect. So let's say a massive storm hits and
A tree, just like we talked about, comes crashing down right through your roof. You've got broken tiles, maybe even structural damage. That's when your building's insurance steps in to save the day.
so we're talking major repairs,
Yeah.
potentially rebuilding parts of the house, right?
Right, exactly. But let's say the storm also caused some flooding in your basement, ruined some furniture down there, maybe even some electronics. Well, that's when your contents insurance would kick in.
Ah, so you might need both types of insurance, even if it's just one event causing all the damage.
Exactly. And this is where it's important to understand those deductibles and limits within each policy. You got to make sure you've got enough coverage to actually be protected.
Okay, so speaking of things going wrong, let's talk about theft. What if someone breaks into your house and takes everything, TV, laptop, jewelry? What happens then?
Well, that's when you'd be really thankful for your contents insurance. It would help cover the cost of replacing those stolen items, of course, up to the limits of your policy.
And that's where that home inventory we talked about would really come in handy, right?
You got it. If you can show exactly what was taken, it makes the claims process so much smoother. A little bit of effort up front can really pay off down the road.
Definitely good advice. Now, let's say the burglar doesn't just steal stuff. They decide to do some damage too. Spray paint on the walls, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be covered under buildings or contents insurance?
That's a tricky one because it could actually fall under both. The damage to the walls themselves, that would be buildings insurance. But if they damaged any of your belongings inside the house, like if they ripped up a couch or something, that would be contents insurance.
So one event can sometimes blur the lines between those two types of coverage.
It definitely can, which is why it's so important to have both. Now, remember how we talked about coverage extending beyond the walls of your home? Those garages, sheds, fences, all that. Let's dig into that a bit more.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. What kind of situations would be covered under that other structures part of the policy?
Okay, so imagine your detached garage gets hit by a hailstorm and it damages the roof and siding. Or maybe a big tree branch falls and smashes your fence. Those are perfect examples of when that coverage would come into play.
So it's like mini buildings insurance for those standalone structures.
That's a great way to put it. It's about making sure those parts of your property are protected too.
Okay, so what about things like landscaping or those big trees that add so much value to a property? What happens if, say, a storm takes one of those down?
That can be a bit tricky. Coverage for landscaping and trees really depends on your specific policy. Some policies might cover damage from things like fire or windstorms, but there might be limits on what they'll pay.
So if a windstorm knocks down my favorite oak tree, my insurance might help pay for the removal or even replacement.
It's possible, but it's definitely worth checking your policy and talking to your insurance agent to understand exactly what's covered.
Makes sense. So while that other structures coverage is great, it's important to know the details.
Absolutely, and that's why it's so important to have a good relationship with your insurance agent. They can help you understand all the fine print and make sure you've got the right coverage for your specific needs.
They're like your insurance Sherpa, guiding you through all the complexities.
I like that. And remember, we're talking about protecting what's probably your biggest investment, your home. So taking the time to really understand your insurance is crucial.
Okay, so before we wrap things up, I want to go back to this idea of peace of mind. We've talked a lot about the financial protection that home insurance provides, but I feel like there's this whole other layer of emotional security that comes with it.
Oh, absolutely. Knowing that you have this safety net, that you're not alone if something bad happens, can bring such a sense of peace.
Right. It's like knowing you've taken steps to protect yourself and your family, and that's priceless.
I couldn't agree more. Home insurance isn't just about bricks and mortar. It's about protecting the people and the memories that make a house a home.
Beautifully said. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of home insurance, I want to leave you with something to think about. You know, we've gone through a lot today, talked about all sorts of things with home insurance.
Yeah, different types, what they cover, all those little details that can really make a difference.
Right. Like those other structures we talked about. I never would have thought about that before.
Easy to overlook, but so important.
Exactly. And then that whole idea of peace of mind, it's not just about the money, you know? It's about knowing you're protected.
Absolutely. It takes a weight off your shoulders, lets you really relax and enjoy your home.
So here's my question for you. Now that you've heard all of this, is there one thing you're going to do differently to make sure you've got the right coverage?
Yeah, are you going to dig out that policy and finally figure out what it all means?
Maybe start that home inventory we talked about.
Or give your insurance agent a call, ask them all those questions you've been meaning to.
Whatever it is, just remember, knowledge is power when it comes to protecting your home.
You've already taken that first step by joining us on this deep dive.
And hey, don't forget all those articles you sent over. There's even more great info in there.
Take some time to go through them, and of course, if any questions come up, reach out to your insurance provider.
Great advice. Well, that's it for today's deep dive into home insurance. Thanks for coming along with us. And remember, when it comes to your home, a little knowledge can go a long way.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So until next time, stay safe and stay informed.